Welcome to Points in the Podcast. As I'm trying to share this live because we live stream it. I'm trying to share it on Twitter as it's starting, which is always trying to do two things at once here. But anyway, welcome to Points in the Podcast. I am Elias
Same
Schuster.
exact thing, Eli. Don't worry, I was doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm Elias Schuster. I'm joined by Matt Rudy, as always, and we're here to talk some hoops. So second straight week, we actually have some material, I feel like, at least relative to how horrible this time of year is when it comes to basketball content. But we got some exciting stuff because the NBA schedule was released this week. It was released yesterday. We now know actually, it's like 80 games or so for every single team because there's some stuff up in the air with the in-season tournament, depending on how that will go for certain teams. But we do have full schedules to look at. And it's interesting, especially we can kind of get into it later, but especially with the addition of the in-season tournament, that's definitely changed the outlook of the calendar, like your typical NBA calendar. When you look at it, there are longer breaks now for teams throughout the middle of the year, which or some teams will have longer breaks, which I'm sure they're excited for. And the month of November overall is kind of interestingly shaken up with the in-season tournament. But the schedule is out, which means basketball is closer. I counted it this morning, 67 days, Matt. We are 67 days away. And yesterday was 69
Still
days.
Seems kind of long. I would have guessed shorter.
Chicago Bulls.
Nice. I would have guessed shorter. It feels shorter.
It does
still
feel
kind of long. But yeah, doesn't it feel like we're closer than that? I guess it is end of October. I mean, that does make sense. We are still in August. I don't know why it feels like it's coming up faster than that. But still, every day closer is better than a day farther away. So we'll leave it at that.
Right. Yeah, I think it just feels closer because I think once the schedule is actually out, and then we know at least in about a month from now, it'll be September 18th. So media day will be inching closer, and then we'll get the preseason games at the beginning of October. So we're only about a month away from more consistent news and more action as players start reporting to their respective cities for training camps and things of that such. So there's definitely things will ramp up here over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, the schedule is always good. Even the NBA does a good job of making it feel like a bigger deal than it really is. Because unlike some of these other sports and even with especially the NFL, for example, but you kind of see it sometimes with baseball too, because there's series. There's a little bit more importance on it. Like you look at the schedule for every NBA team, and it's like, yeah, it's exciting that it's here. It just means the season's coming, but it's hard to really judge much on it. That each team's going to play like 4 times during the season because of the divisions. Like that they're going to do their West Coast trip. If they're on the East, they're going to do their East Coast trip on their West. So you know what to expect, but it just feels more exciting because, hey, now when I stare at my computer screen or I search, blank schedule, there's something there for me to look at. And there's dates for me to think about getting tickets for and doing stuff. So that's at least.
Yeah, so you especially being in Milwaukee, figuring out the dates that the Bulls are coming to town, that's a little bit, as a visiting team fan living in Milwaukee, like it's nicer for you at least, so you can be like, all right, cool. I know X date, like these are the 2 dates or whatever that I'm going to have to block out to buy tickets.
Yeah.
And then it's
those off.
It really fun. It's nice. The MLK Day games or the opening night games, like that's kind of the big 3 because everybody's going to play everybody. And then it's also like, all right, the Lakers come to Chicago, but are they on the second end of a back-to-back? Because if they are, might not want to get those tickets, might not get LeBron. It's also picking your spots for those games that you want to try and buy tickets to and seeing, who's not going to play in this one.
Well, that's a good recommendation for fans out there who are who's listening.
Don't just blindly buy Lakers tickets because they're coming into town. Check the Lakers schedule, see if they played the night before.
Well, honestly,
if you're a Kawhi fan, just don't buy Clippers tickets until the day of.
Yeah, don't. And honestly, I think it's just a good rule of thumb for any team now. I mean, with the way that superstars are managed, make sure you check: is this the back end of a back-to-back? Especially if it's a back end of a back-to-back where they're traveling to your favorite city, your home city. There's a good chance that a star might not play in those games. So just keep load management in mind. It stinks that's what has to happen now when you're at purchasing tickets. But I mean, man, I know so many friends and family and people who've done that exact thing, who they go and they get a ticket, they're excited to see somebody, and they don't get to see that very person. So that's a whole conversation for another day, the whole load management thing. But it is something that's a good point to keep in mind when you're looking at the schedule and when tickets start coming out, because the last thing you want to do is, oh, I'm going to take my son to go see LeBron. And then, well, LeBron's going to play like 60 games or LeBron's going to play like
Yeah.
65 games.
Sorry, but like you got to pick your spots there.
Right, exactly. So we're going to get into some more schedule stuff later in the show during the second half. The first thing we're going to do, of course, is go through our weekly bullet points as we do every week, get you caught up on what happened this week around the basketball universe and specifically, of course, in the NBA. I would say the biggest news of the week that we need to start with, or I don't know if you consider it the biggest, but it's just the most it's the sweetest, I guess. It's better than like a James Harden story, which we'll talk about in a second. It's just the Hall of Fame inductions. It's always that time of year is always sweet. It's always fun to see certain players get their recognition that they deserve. This year, it was Tony Parker, Dirk Nowitzki, Dwayne Wade, and Paul Gasol all getting inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. It was awesome to see all four of them get their moment, get the respect that they deserve. I think this class in particular this year, I mean, that is a star-studded group, especially when
Very
you're
much so.
looking at, especially when you names like Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade, obviously are huge. But I think somebody like Paul Gasol and Tony Parker, they're in the vein of maybe not getting as much respect as they deserve. And I know that feels weird to say, considering we're talking about them being in the Hall of Fame. However, those are two names that maybe just aren't as thought about as much, especially with Parker being one of the main pieces of that big three with Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili, who got his recognition one season ago. But we definitely don't want to forget how big of an influence Tony Parker was on the league and just for that San Antonio Spurs team. I mean, specifically him, he kind of paved the path for these smaller guards to have a very long and sustainable career. I mean, a lot of people always worried about, whether or not these smaller guards could go long into their career, could avoid getting injured. But when you look at it, he was a pretty reliable player all throughout his career. I mean, he definitely at the end there was playing less games, but in his mid 30s, he hit the 70 game threshold at least once. He was hovering around that mark as he entered his 30s, and just an overall outstanding player, great defender, fun to watch on that end of the floor, but just the perfect facilitator, of course, for what that San Antonio Spurs team needed at the time. So just happy to see him get his moment, because I just don't know if he's one of those players who I feel like may not be talked about. Yeah, he may not be talked about enough at times,
I mean, him and Powell, and it's not by no means an insult when I say this to him and Powell, but him and Powell were Robins to like two legendary Batman, like Batman, I guess. Like Kobe and Tim Duncan are two of like, I'm not going to go into rank your top 10 basketball players of all time, but if you put Kobe or Tim Duncan on your top 10 NBA players of all time, nobody would tell you your list is too wrong or say that's out of the question. So those guys flew under the radar a little bit. Tony Parker a little bit more so because, Manu was there too. But like those guys were some of the best Robins to be, in the history of basketball. Obviously, Scottie Pippen probably the best, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. Great to see Dirk and D Wade get their moments. Legendary Chicago Bull, Dwayne Wade.
Legendary, yeah.
I got to be honest with you. This Hall of Fame class, like, I know we're getting older as sports fans and adults. Like, I'm in my early 30s. I believe you're late 20s. Like, we're getting up there. We're not kids anymore. But, like, holy shit, man. Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol, Tony Parker, and Dwayne Wade all in the Hall of Fame all at once. Like, that's way too. I mean, it just made me feel like, oh my God, it's already time for these guys. Like, wow.
Right. I agree, because those are the four guys that a lot of people,
not just like even childhood, like my formative years watching the NBA, right? Like high school and stuff.
And I think, we do have to keep in mind, this is just to make us feel a little bit better, and is that each of these guys had very, very long careers. It's
they did.
And sometimes, and I mean, yes, that is obviously representative of a lot of people who end up making the Hall of Fame, but especially these players. I mean, Gasol, he was technically in the league from 2001 to 2019, which is, crazy to think about, and he didn't play kind of that final year of his career, really, or the last like two. He was very banged up, but he was technically in the NBA from that stretch. And that's the same exact amount of time that we saw for Tony Parker. And you saw Dirk, he ended up entering the league, what year was it, in 1998, and he was there until 2019. So obviously these guys were all in the league for an incredible amount of time,
Yeah.
for multiple generations of basketball fans coming up and being able to watch them. And also, it wasn't just that they were in the league during that time; they were successful throughout basically their the entirety of their career, or in
Yeah.
different moments throughout their career. You look at a young Dirk, and while he was somebody that took a long time for him to kind of reach that mountaintop and win his first championship, he competed in the finals before that. He was very much seen as a consistent championship threat throughout his younger years in the league. And Tony Parker, part of that Spurs big three that obviously had so many different kind of there were so many different eras of that squad throughout almost a 20-year stretch with
Yeah.
Tim Duncan and
Seriously.
stuff. So yeah, I mean it's yes, I'm just trying to make you feel a little bit better, Matt. It's definitely true that it's
Thanks.
like, whoa,
It's helping a
it's
little bit,
crazy.
not a
Yeah,
ton, but it's. I feel
yeah.
a little bit better than I did at least when I started
Right.
saying that.
Yeah, it's definitely still crazy, but these are players who had abnormally long and successful careers, hence
It's
why
a fair
they
point.
are hence why they are in the NBA. But also a good point that you made with this idea of the Robin, right? Like the Paul Gasol and Tony Parker, these were two that throughout basically their entirety of their career, except for when Gasol was maybe in Memphis in
Memphis.
his early 20s, they were seen as that number two guy. They were seen as that right hand man, whereas opposed to Nowitzki was always seen throughout the entirety of his career as the number one option on his team, except for maybe when they drafted Luka finally at the end there.
Yeah.
But up until then, he had a stretch of 15 years or so where he was the guy, and that was the same exact thing for Dwayne Wade, obviously. And while a lot of people will kind of think about the Miami Big Three with LeBron and Bosh when they think about Dwayne Wade, nobody should forget, one, how amazing he was before then, and that he convinced them to come to him. Let's not
Yeah.
forget that. He told LeBron James, hey, come to me in Miami. And yeah, it could have worked out in different ways. There's, of course, all the especially
Yeah,
this
I
week.
saw all that smoke this week about how if the Bulls could have unloaded Luol Deng, that would have been here. And I love Luol Deng, but my God.
Yeah, it's not
So
yet.
from what I can gather, Luol Deng has cost the Bulls Kobe Bryant when he wanted to force a
This
trade,
is true, yeah.
and the Heatles.
And
Okay.
Lou, look, Lou is a
I
Bulls
love Lou. He's a Bulls legend,
legend.
and I
Yeah.
love him. He was very good here, but my God, I would have,
But you trade him
I would,
for either Kobe
I
or
would have
the
put,
Miami
I would
Big
have
Three.
put him in the front seat of my car and driven him to LA both times, to LA and back both times.
Yeah, I would have done not
That
just
we
to the
got those.
airport, just taking him to
Yeah.
just taking him to Los Angeles. And Luol Deng, I love you. I'm sure you're a huge follower of the Points in the podcast. So
Has to be.
so we love you. But I mean, if you're gonna have
Even
a
he
chance,
gets it. He would probably get it.
right, he would even understand. But with Wade, I think people forget just how successful he was before the Miami Big Three, not only winning, a championship in 2006. And yeah, Shaq was on that team, but that's
They brought in
past his
Shaq, but
prime.
he didn't play Robin to Shaq. Like they
Oh
were both
no,
like
not at all.
no, like that. That's how big of a deal he was. Like when he
Right.
was young and that good. Like they brought in Shaquille O'Neal in a trade, and he did not. There was an argument over who was he was arguably the better player during that run. That's not he was as important.
He was. Yeah, he was. And I think, obviously Shaq, he did, that was probably, I would say, Shaq's last
really good, dominant.
Yeah, I mean, last effective, a really effective season, I would say, because he did a lot of
He had
people
some solid years with the Suns, but he was, definitely back nine of the career there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, no, this year in let's see, I'll pull it up right now. But this year in Miami,
was it?
It was 05-06 season.
Nailed it.
In Miami, yeah. And yeah, if you look at that, that was probably his last season. I was guessing that was, and I was right. This was his last season averaging, 20 points and then after that second season where Miami, one of the rare teams to win a championship and then get bounced in the first round. That was
Shaq was done after that.
Yeah, that was clearly the end of that. And then Shaq ends up, he only played 40 games that season, averaged 17 points, 7 rebounds. He ends up getting traded the following year to Phoenix, where, he played okay in 2008-09. He was an all-star for Phoenix, but Miami was the last great, you saw the last great Shaq season there in 05-06, but it still wasn't, he still wasn't the main cog there. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking about Wade was averaging 27 points that season, with nearly 7 assists per game,
Jeez, I
shooting.
don't think I realized that. I knew he was
Yeah,
great that year. I don't think I realized it was that good.
right. And he was,
Granted, 2005, I was zeroed in on the White Sox. It was a very different time for me.
yeah, a different time during that stage. However, he was also shooting like 50% from the field, played 75 games. His playoff stats were equally as remarkable, averaging 28 points per game in the playoffs with 6 assists, shooting 49.7% from the field. So, Wade is a guy that I'm also not sure he gets enough credit for how good he was at the age that he was,
Mm-hmm.
because he was one of those guys that when he entered the league, not only was Miami immediately, I think, better than a lot of people expected, just because Wade was also a guy in the college ranks that kind of rose up a lot faster than people
He
realized.
dragged Marquette to the Final Four, right?
Yeah, and then when
that was the Carmelo Final Four, where
and
Syracuse won.
And there weren't a lot of players. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess his archetype was in the NBA, but the athleticism that he entered the league with was second to none. If people have not watched, young Dwayne Wade highlights, just please go do yourself that service, because it's very different than the player you watched with the Miami Heat, I would say, during those championship runs. And part of that is because he had to take a back seat to LeBron James, and also leave enough room there for Chris Bosh to do what he does, but Wade's ability to get downhill and just his explosiveness was absolutely incredible. And there's sometimes some old Dwayne Wade highlights that pop up on the social media timeline, and it's pretty jaw dropping to see what he was able to do then. But yeah, I mean, and then the next season in 08-09, this would have been before they got a year or so before the Big Three was formed, wherever it was. But he was averaging 30 points per game. So, there was an era there where his scoring was absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, the Hall of Fame overall, there are 4 great names who deserve their moment under the spotlight. The speeches were all pretty great. Wade's in particular, if you haven't had a chance to just go back and see what he had to say, felt pretty special. It was awesome. And Pau Gasol obviously having a close relationship with Kobe Bryant's family. Good to see him up there, and fun stuff overall. I'm glad it was a fun class, and we'll see next year. Now Joakim Noah is eligible for us Bulls guys. Would love to see him get the recognition he deserves as well. But okay, so that moving on from the Hall of Fame induction stuff, let's go to the James Harden stuff. Matt, I know that you have some thoughts here on this James Harden situation. Before I let you set ablaze this this podcast,
I'll keep it cool, but it's just, you go first. But it's just, there's things that upset me. But go ahead.
Right. Well, I was just going to quickly give a quick rundown of where things stand with James Harden for those who maybe have decided not to follow the drama. And I can't blame you, because, I feel the same way. I have to follow a lot of this stuff, but like anything with Lillard and Harden, I'm pretty exhausted with. But
yeah.
But there were some rather big things that happened over the last week with James Harden, and the first of which really set the internet on fire was during a tour trip to China. He's over there, I believe, with Adidas, and just NBA players go overseas all the time to promote themselves and their brand. And James Harden was over there, and during a discussion with media members and fans, I believe, he makes very clear that he will not play for Daryl Morey ever again. The front office leader there in Philadelphia, he specified that he will not play for him, and he called him a liar. So if you want the exact quote there, it was, Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say that again, he said. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Made himself very clear on that one. When asked about this, returning to Houston, actually, I believe it was just yesterday or maybe this morning, but he KHOU 11 in Houston. They caught up with Harden, asked him about where his relationship with Philadelphia currently stands. And what did he say? He said it's too late to repair the relationship. So he completely made clear that he has no intention of sticking around in Philly, despite other reports after his comments in China out of Philadelphia saying that Daryl Morey plans to just keep Harden, hoping that he returns to come play. And they have limited and stopped the trade discussions for the time being. So that's where things stand. There's also reports surfacing, I believe, from ESPN saying that Harden is prepared to do whatever it takes to to get himself to another team, and it sounds like that team he prefers is the Los Angeles Clippers. So that's the drama that's caught up. And Matt, how does all that make you feel?
I would, if I was Daryl Morey, I would give him the largest middle finger I possibly can and say, "Cool, you're under contract here. Sit down." Like that. It's not like this is the last year of a bad deal or whatever, and things have gone sour. James Harden actively, I know it's a lot of money. He actively opted into this season and chose to stay in Philadelphia. If he had a pull tab in case of emergency and go to LA. It was decline the option to go to LA. He made the decision to stay in Philadelphia and be a part of that team. That's it's we've talked about it with NBA players and their contracts. And I know it happens in every sport, but the NBA more than anybody else. If you want to opt into that last year of that deal and make that money, you're running the risk of you having to play there. You don't get to have it both ways where it's, oh, I'm going to take the money, but also screw this guy. I'm never going to play for this team again. I get the relationship is soured, but like decline the option. You've already made hundreds of millions of dollars throughout your career. You're in China because you're promoting your wine brand, which is going to make you an insane amount of money more, whether or not it's even good. It doesn't matter. Like the name is going to make money. Like you opted into this contract. You opted into a legally binding contract or league-wide binding contract that puts you on the 76ers for this year. It then becomes their choice if they want you to play for them or not. And if they decide that you're on the team, then you're on the team.
Right.
I would actively, I don't care if he has trade value from the Clippers. I would keep him on the roster the entire year. I don't care. I would pay him the money and say, cool, you're here. You're a 76er, sit on the bench.
Yeah, I think the question that a lot of people are still asking, and I think where things are a bit hazy, at least publicly, is what exactly happened with him
Nothing.
picking up this option? Just what
he wanted
happened.
The money. He wanted the $35 million, whatever it was. That's it.
Right.
I'm telling you, that's why he picked it up, because he wasn't going to get that from anybody else. He wanted that money, and now he wants to play somewhere else. He wants his cake and to eat it too. And judging by his previous tactics, he might start eating a lot of cake.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. I think the thing for me is I do think he could have gotten 35 elsewhere, and I mean maybe the fact that the market has been as dry as it has been to trade for him suggests that he couldn't have. But if his goal was to make get a long-term deal, make around 30 million a year. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to think a team out there could have put that up for him. And again, maybe that's wrong because we're seeing what the trade market looks like now. But I also think just how dramatic things have turned with him and how he continues to, publicly make these comments and things like that, that also doesn't help the trade value. So it's just, it's a little bit confusing to see why the situation got to the point where it was, because I think also, I mean, I just don't understand why he wants to trade in general. Like, even if there was a discussion with Daryl Morey and he said, okay, I'm going to pick it up, but then I need you guys to work on trading me. And then let's say Morey went and Morey said, okay, pick up the option, and we're gonna look for a trade. And then Morey saw, well, there's no trade value out there that we like, so we're actually going to keep you. And he said, what the heck? I picked up my option because I thought I was also going to try to help you guys by getting a return for me and whatever. And maybe that's where things started to get super messy, as there was this idea, there was this mutual agreement, right? Of, all right, and that's how it was reported initially. I'm going to pick up my option. We're going to work together to find a trade. That way you at least get something for my services and I get to go somewhere else. But then they saw the market wasn't going to be where Morey wants it. And I think it was obvious because we saw what he did with Ben Simmons. He was going to wait until he could get a superstar caliber player in Harden, and that's who he ended up getting.
He's been through this exact situation before. Like, okay, you're not traded right now. You still probably can be in November or December.
Right. So, I mean, that's the other thing is, I mean, just come back and play. Look at what same thing with Kevin Durant last season. The trade demands fell through in Brooklyn. What did Kevin Durant do? He said, okay, fine, probably with a chip on his shoulder, I'm going to come into Brooklyn, play amazing. He looked fantastic as Kevin Durant normally does when he was playing for Brooklyn, and trade value continued to go up. And I mean, the value there was always higher than it would be for Harden, but he came out, played well, and then the deal ends up happening and he gets to go where he goes. So the question is,
Yeah.
Harden clearly doesn't want to take that approach. But I think after seeing it work with a friend of his, or who was a friend of his, Kevin Durant, I don't necessarily know why it wouldn't be an option that he's open for, because just go out there, play well for a little bit, and then get traded to where you want to go, or go out
Yeah.
there, play a little bit, and have a chance to compete. Because that's the other thing that's extremely confusing to me is
You're on a good team.
exactly if the goal here, like the Houston thing. I mean, I think the idea that he's demanded 2 trades and he demanded, well, now 3 trades in
Yeah,
the
3.
short time that he did is ridiculous. But getting out of Houston, okay, it kind of made some sense. He was like, I mean, it was
Houston was going a different direction. All that one made sense to me. I get it.
yeah, it was still a little strange just because it's like they've done everything to build around you, but things were getting ugly there at the end with trading for Westbrook and whatever. And even though that was probably his idea, whatever. Houston was prepared to go in a different direction. Harden was. He says, okay, you trade me to Brooklyn. He goes to Brooklyn. He's on a great team in Brooklyn, but then, and that kind of, he was the first piece to kind of to drift off, which was strange because that was another team that had sky high, potential. But whatever, you're with Kyrie. It's extremely toxic of a situation in Brooklyn. That big three is going to be one of the biggest what ifs ever. And he asks out. I mean, still not great, still kind of silly, especially if you want your own team. Just stay in Brooklyn. They'll probably keep you in Brooklyn, and you can build your own thing there. Okay, but whatever. He goes to Philly, and then now he's in Philly, and I think, what else can you want? Because at the end of the day, this is probably the perfect
There's
situation.
not a better situation for him out there that can actively take him on and trade for him that I
Right.
can
Well,
think of.
and
The
you're
Clippers aren't going to be a better team than Philly can be.
right, and you're with a star. I mean, you're with a star player who, especially as a player like Harden continues to age throughout his career and becomes less of that, isolation scorer and more of that playmaker and I guess true point guard in some ways. You're with a guy in Embiid who makes sense, I think, for you as a pairing, and
And a
and
budding young star in Tyrese Maxey.
sure, yeah, exactly. You have another, and you have a young piece there, so. I just the foundation of why he wants to trade is confusing to me because it sounds like
I think he just gets bored.
yeah, yeah, he
I
probably
really
wasn't.
think he's just bored.
But it's like, what do you want to do in LA? That's what confuses me too. You want to go to the Clippers? Okay, fine. You go to the Clippers and you're with Kawhi and Paul George, 2 players who are constantly injured. And while I like both those players, like don't get me wrong, I respect Kawhi and Paul George a ton. I love Kawhi specifically. I've always been a huge fan of his. But those, like, it's easy to imagine him going to the Clippers and then being immediately upset at how little he sees, players like Kawhi and Paul George playing and how frustrated he is with that whole situation. So I don't know why that's the specific place he wants to go. I mean, they do have a clear need at the point guard position. They have Westbrook now again re-signed, but they have that need for someone like Harden alongside those two. But I also think like Philly's potential in the East is higher than the Clippers would be in the West. So if the goal is to win, why not stay in Philly and try to get to, an Eastern Conference Finals and compete? Because last season the team looked pretty good. Harden, to his credit, played really well in a couple of those playoff games and was the lone reason that they stayed alive. So the whole thing makes no sense to me. It seems like unnecessary drama that he stirs up, and I don't know how it's going to end right now, but it's just he's made very clear that he is not going to suit up for them again. He is not going to play, and maybe that changes as the season inches closer, but it's very hard to believe. And I would say right now, all things are in line for Philly to head into the year with Harden on the roster, but just not playing. And
He's
then
going to end up playing, I
you
think.
think he'll play? I don't
I do
know.
think he'll end
Well,
up
okay, I
playing.
guess I should say that if he does play, it'll strictly be like he was playing in Houston, where he purposely
Yeah.
throws the ball out of bounds. He's wearing a fat suit and he's doing everything he can to get out of there.
It just bothers me because he's a really good basketball player when he wants to be engaged, and it's just it's every year now. It's even though he's under contract, a contract he willingly chose to sign.
Well,
He's
and
like,
pick
I'm
up.
just
That's the
bored.
biggest
Yeah,
thing.
and
And
pick
pick
up.
up. Yeah.
Pick up. I'll come back. Sure, this is good. And then no, I'm actually no, I don't want to be here anymore. Trade me now. it happens in the NBA. It happens in every sport, but it just seems to happen in the NBA more often than not, where players are under contract and actively pick up options, and then just decide, no, actually, I'd rather play here. So just do that.
I think
I don't.
we need to do like we need to rank the things that Harden would do to get out of Philly or just to get out of the situation that he's in. Because I think we already heard a comment. This is another thing earlier this week. He already commented that he was suggesting that it would be fun to play a season in China. So him just leaving for China, that
I
seems to
think he
be
could.
on the
I actually think he'd do that because I think
just
they'd pay him a lot of money to go do it, and it seems like he likes being over. I mean, he's obviously over there on tour. I think he's been there a couple times with Adidas and stuff. It seems like he likes being there. I would not put that past him.
I think he would. I feel like he would crawl for a full game. Like it refuse to run.
Just go sit at center court, cross-legged.
Oh, like hunger strike it. Yeah, just
Yeah,
sit at center court. I could see him maybe cutting off his own foot, but then everyone's like, oh, he can't play, and then somehow it reattaches it. That seems like a level that he would go. He
What
might.
if he custom made a James Harden clip or a Harden whatever number Clippers jersey and started wearing that out to warmups?
Oh, that's good. He just completely. He just wears the wrong. Yeah, he just wears
Just
the wrong jersey.
buys on NBA.com, NBA shop, whatever, Clippers shorts and a James Harden Clippers jersey and wears
Yeah.
that for every warm up.
That would be good. And during the game too. He's just out there. And then what if he just starts
Takes technical fouls every time he steps on the floor because he's wearing the wrong uniform.
he just starts scoring for the other team? I could see that happening as well. He's just breaks Joel Embiid's ankles, goes for it. There's a lot of we've seen that he will go to great lengths to get out of there. And he might go he might make fun of Rocky. I don't know. What's some Philly stuff that he could do?
That's grounds for just start saying "Go Cowboys." Be very pro Cowboys on Twitter and Instagram. That would get him run out of Philly very fast.
He would start what can you do? They don't like in Chicago. Obviously, you don't put ketchup on a hot dog. Is there something you don't put on a cheesesteak?
I don't think so. Maybe just speak out against cheesesteaks.
Just speak out against. Just be a very anti.
Just make it known he's very anti cheesesteak.
Just at the end of every interview, oh, okay, I got to go grab some dinner, but it's definitely not going to be a cheesecake. Have you tried those or cheesesteak? Yeah. Have you tried those things? Those things are disgusting. There's going to be some interesting stuff. That's why I kind of hope they do keep him around because we've seen that he'll do some crazy stuff to get out of the situation. So
yeah,
we'll see what comes. We'll see what comes our way.
Something tells me we'll have something to talk about with this next week too.
Oh, probably. Yeah. Well, and maybe we'll think of another list of things that he would do to get out of there. Okay. A couple of final bullet points here to get you caught up on this week's festivities, if you will. Is this was kind of big news. Kristaps Porzingis. He is on
plantar fasciitis, right?
Yes, plantar fasciitis. Unsurprisingly, he is hurt again. He's got a foot issue. He will be missing the FIBA World Cup. He was originally supposed to play for his home country of Latvia, right?
Latvia, yeah.
Yeah, so Latvia was in it. He was supposed to be taking the floor for them. And plantar fasciitis is that's what he's trying to recover from at the moment. And it's definitely going to be something that the Celtics have to keep in mind. I mean, there's no question like that. Not only is that the type of injury that, a foot injury is always scary for a big man. He's had those issues in the past. But this one in particular, this is something that can linger. So like they just contributed, a 2-year extension towards Porzingis.
Yeah.
They traded Marcus Smart to the Memphis Grizzlies in a 3-team trade to make the room to add Porzingis. I respected the decision at least to try something a little bit new. We've talked about this on past shows. It'll definitely be questioned by a lot of Celtics fans if they don't continue to play to the level that they've played at the past couple of years, which is, a championship level. They've been in the mix every single season. So if they can't manage to do that, or if Porzingis, who they took a pretty big gamble on, adding him into the mix, if he can't find a way to stay healthy, then it's just going to be a bad look in Boston. And there's already been some tension there with Jaylen Brown's situation, even though he's had his supermax. How long can they keep him satisfied? And So it'll be interesting to see how this Porzingis thing goes, because that was always the concern, right? When you trade for somebody like him, there's no denying that he's a unique talent, that he's somebody who even last year had a pretty underrated season. If you go back and look what he did, he actually played very well. I understood the desire by the Celtics to add somebody like him into the mix, but if he can't stay healthy, then that's going to look real rough, because they already have issues with a big man in Robert Williams who can't stay healthy, and their other option is an aging Al Horford who wasn't even able to play in like back-to-backs last season. So there's big questions at that center position. They invested a lot of money in what they believe the answer could be in the front court, and now we'll have to wait and see whether Porzingis can stay healthy.
I mean, the lucky thing, I guess, for Porzingis, I mean, there's good and bad. The bad thing is plantar fasciitis really hurts. I've had it before. I had it in college. It's
Oof.
not fun. The good news is, like, it will go away. Like, if he treats it, it's the off season. He's got, look, we were just talking about over 2 months left till opening night. Like, take care of it the right way. It will go away over time. At least this isn't like an ankle thing that has the. I mean, of course, you can get plantar fasciitis again, but this isn't something that's necessarily like going to lead to more of this or be a lingering injury that's going to stick around for a long time. But yeah, it's another injury-prone player adding another injury-prone type injury to the. How many times did I just say injury there? Jeez, just adding another one to the list, and at some point it kind of stops. It's not really coincidence anymore. Like, it's second time I mentioned the White Sox on this podcast, but like, a guy like Eloy Jimenez keeps just having these little things pop up, and Kristaps kind of seems to be the case. Like, he is a little bit of a unicorn. He's got a unique skill set. He can be really good. He just can't stay on the floor. So this is like good news. He'll probably be fine for opening night and be ready to go. But bad news is it's another one.
It might be something. I mean, but the thing that also just worries me in general is, I mean, feet things can linger. If I understand,
especially for big men, yeah.
Right, yeah, specifically for big men. So, but that's kind of always the area of the body when a big man is having a foot issue is just something that opens up another can of worms of being concerned. But I mean, yeah, if you go look at Porzingis's, games played over the past few years, this is a guy who played 65 games last season, which was the most that he's played since his second year in the league. So he's not super old. He's only 27 years old currently, or going on 28. And he played 66 or 65 games last season. Like I said, last time he did that was 2016-17. He played 72 his rookie season with New York. But in between that, we're talking 48 games. Then he had the ACL injury out the full season. 57 games in Dallas, 43 games in Dallas. Traded midway through 2 seasons ago, only played a total of 51 games. So there's been such limited availability through him. I'm sure the Celtics were hoping that, we've seen guys who have had issues staying healthy, younger, more youthful times in their careers, flip things around and learn how to better take care of their bodies and exactly how to fit into things at the NBA level. We've seen them figure things out as they've gotten older and get a lot better with staying on the floor. And that was probably something that the Celtics were hoping that they would see from Porzingis, and it's still possible after he played 65 games last season. And he also shot a career high from the field last year, averaged a career high in points with 23.2, and did pretty well on the glass. He's improved kind of in the I guess he hasn't really necessarily improved in the rebounding department, but he's continued to show that he can be an asset there. And defensively, he's taken some steps in the right direction over the past couple of years too. So I understand, like I said, the desire to get him there, but whether or not he can stay healthy is going to be a big factor. And that was a thing I feel like they didn't have, the past couple of years. That wasn't a concern that we had to see for Boston. I feel like they knew that their guys could stay healthy for the most part. Mm-hmm. They had reliable assets, and Marcus Smart was a very physical player, so he'd have bumps and bruises pop up here. And like I said, they've had issues in that front court. But their main guys they've been able to rely on during these finals runs that they've made the past couple of years, and now they're going to have to hope that they can continue to do that with Porzingis. The last thing here, the last 2 things, Victor Konchar in Denver, he tore his ACL and he's out. This is not a big name. It's not Porzingis, but he's somebody that did play about 60 games last year for Denver, and He's only 25 years old. So a role player for them that they've had off the bench at times. Not anybody major. Don't expect anybody to be
I was going
freaking
to
out.
say, I don't have much on him right now.
No, I understand. Only played 5 games in the playoffs, but like I said, a younger guy there who could have been somebody that a team scooped up and or a team was able to rely on. And yeah, so he's out. And tore his ACL. So bummer for him and bummer for Denver. Then the last thing would be Kemba Walker. I don't know if people saw this, but Kemba
He's
Walker.
overseas now, right? Where did he end up?
I knew it. I had it written down.
China,
Monaco. That's what it was. Yes, Kemba Walker. He ended up.
That's a fun life. Good for him. He's going to go get paid a whole bunch of money to play basketball in Monaco after having made a whole bunch of money. That's a pretty nice retirement.
And we all know that we're gonna see, like, in 2 months there's gonna be like Kemba Walker drops 50, 10, and and 8, and just goes crazy. So I mean, hey, like you said, good life. Props to Kemba.
That's awesome. Good for him.
Yeah, only 33 years old. We
surprised there's not a role for him in the NBA still, but maybe there is, and he was just like, nah, this sounds a little bit more fun right now.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we talked about smaller guards earlier in the show with Tony Parker. Sometimes it's rare to age gracefully as you enter those 30s or those early 30s, early to mid 30s. Kemba was somebody who just wasn't able to do that. He wasn't able to stay healthy. I agree. You'd think just because of his 3-point shot that he would be able to find a home. However, the 3-point shot also really struggled in his last couple of stops and he wasn't as efficient. And he isn't somebody who is able to, contribute at a high level defensively. So it's been hard for him at just, a smaller guard to find a home. Perfect. Go to Monaco, live life, be 33 years old, and make some extra money and just have a good time.
That's going to be nice.
Yeah, I'm happy for Kemba. Good for him. Okay, so that's where we'll wrap up with the bullet points for this week. We rambled on Harden, which is fine, and a little bit on Porzingis. But the Porzingis one, I think, is like you said, he might be ready by the start of the season. However, it's if he's having issues throughout the year, that's big.
Yeah, it's another. We'll just add another one to the list that seems to keep piling up.
Right. All right, so let's quickly go over some of this NBA schedule news. If you haven't seen, but you should have, it's out. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. All teams across the league have their full schedules except for the little divots in November, which will be the in-season tournament. All games in the in-season tournament, group stage play, knockout play, and we'll talk more about the in-season tournament, obviously, as it gets closer. But even semifinal games, these are all games that will count toward the regular season, except for the championship game. So technically speaking, if you are the team that makes it to the championship round, then that is an 83rd game on your 82-game schedule. A little bit strange how that works. I don't think teams will love the idea of that, but I guess the NBA is hoping, that the meaning of that NBA Cup will make teams work a little bit harder. But I think also speaking towards the in-season tournament, I believe I saw that the San Antonio Spurs will be the team whose in-season tournament games get the most National League broadcasted attention. And I think that speaks to the fact, and this is another thing that we've mentioned, I believe, on the show before, that the NBA probably knows that the younger teams are going to see this in-season tournament as an opportunity to, prove themselves and try to compete at a higher level. And they'll be the ones that hopefully play at that treat it as this playoffs atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And maybe that rises the intensity for these veteran teams and the rest of the league just naturally because the young teams are going hard at it. But even if it doesn't, then it's fun to see these young teams, try to compete at a higher level and care a little bit more towards something like this midseason tournament because they know at the end of the day, the postseason isn't going to be something that they can make a deep run in. So that'll be that part for the in-season tournament does interest me, just seeing how many teams really care about it overall. But I do think the younger teams will have motive.
I'm with you there. Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to do for the schedule is we're not going to go through every team or things like that, but we'll go
You
through
want to go through all 82?
we'll go through the prime time. We'll have a show every day. No, we'll or every hour just to get through everything. But obviously there's these primetime games, there's these nationally televised games, the opening week schedule, MLK Day, Christmas Day. So I want to quickly blaze through those, and Matt, we can just give our thoughts on maybe the best matchups that we see for each
Sure.
section. So starting with opening week, the opening night games are both Western Conference games, which surprised me a little bit. The Lakers and Nuggets will tip things off as the first game of the NBA season before the Suns and Warriors. Our first look at the Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker trio, a team with no defense who will go up against one of the best offenses in the NBA.
Should be fun.
So that should be interesting. That's opening night, and then I'll just rattle off these other matchups that will happen throughout the week and get national broadcast attention on either ESPN on TNT. So you have Celtics Knicks, you have Dallas Spurs, you have Philly Milwaukee, you have Phoenix Lakers, second Phoenix game. You have Miami Celtics, a second Celtics game. You have Warriors Kings, a second Warriors game. You have Knicks Pelicans, a second Knicks game. And then you got a third Suns game with Utah and Phoenix. So most surprising one of opening week on a national broadcast schedule. It is only on NBA TV for what it's worth, but the Phoenix Utah is an interesting one to be included in there. I thought you might.
They're going to put Phoenix on as much as they possibly can now, I feel like.
Right. I just thought maybe a bigger market would be thrown in there. Also, I mean, Utah is a fun team. I guess they're interested to see if they can, compete as well as they did last year. But I do think that'll be a good game, but I was just surprised to see that one thrown into the mix. The one that I personally am the most favorite for, or the most excited for out of all of these, is just a Warriors Kings game on Friday.
You took my answer, Eli. I can't wait for that one too. That series was so absolutely fun and awesome last year. I can't wait to see them again.
And I really do think that's like at least this season, it's hard because we don't know how much longer the Warriors will keep going with their core. I mean, they have Draymond under contract for a few more years, and they can re-sign Clay, and they can and Curry's been playing well, so who knows? Maybe they still have a few more years of this. But that is a really fun rivalry storyline to follow, just because of not only how great that that first round series was last year, going 7, but also same state, young versus old. The Kings were not afraid to kind of, it's funny because the Grizzlies were the team that were, and maybe they'll rise, they'll do well again this year. But the Grizzlies were that team kind of talking smack, being like, we can fight, we can take on the Warriors, whatever, but we're the young fun team. And then the
Kings were the ones that actually did it.
Yeah, the Kings were the one that actually slid in there and really stuck it to them and gave the Warriors a fantastic series. So that game, I'm excited not only to just see the intensity, especially for a week one, or the first week of the season game. I feel like that there'll be high intensity for that one on ESPN, but also for the Kings. I mean, they have a lot to prove. This is a team that wants to show that they are here consistently for the next few years. They have a core that they are confident in, and that a De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis duo can continue to compete at a high level in the Western Conference, because I think some expect them to take a little bit of a step back, or at least not be hanging out at the top of the conference like they were for a large part of last season. But this is a good opportunity for them to show that they have no intention of doing just that. So that should be that's my favorite one of the opening week. If I had to throw out another one there, I would probably put the Dallas and San Antonio game, just because I am excited to see Wemby versus Luka. I think that's a fun international player matchup, but a good test right off the bat for San Antonio and for Wembanyama, because there's questions about Dallas for sure, but if he wanted to see NBA talent and go up against superstars,
he'll get it.
You're going to get Kyrie and Luka right away. So that'll be a very exciting game. Any other ones that you feel like stand out to you that you're excited to watch for that opening week?
Miami and Boston. That was such a fun series, and obviously it was an Eastern Conference Final series as opposed to the first round, like we were talking about with the Warriors and Kings, but just mostly the same teams. Maybe Damian Lillard's on the Heat at that point, even though that's still up in the air or whatever. That's going to be a really intriguing matchup.
Yeah, I think it'll be ugly, but it could be ugly in the right ways, which is the good thing.
Those two teams are capable of playing a fun, ugly game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Rarely is it ugly and fun, but those two teams specifically can make it so. Okay, so moving on to Christmas Day. If you haven't seen, these have been out for a little bit for a little while now, but the Christmas Day schedule, we now know the order of the games. So starting at noon on December 25th will be Bucks Knicks. Then your second game will be Warriors Nuggets. Your third game is Celtics Lakers, followed by 76ers Heat, and wrapping up the nightcap with Dallas and Phoenix. I got to admit, I'm impressed with the NBA. They usually give us a stinker to start Christmas Day off, but I think Knicks Bucks is a really fun
Should be a fun game.
opening Christmas Day game. I can't remember. I think it was the Knicks last year.
I feel like
but
the
it was
Knicks always open up Christmas Day. Like
Oh
not
yeah,
only they always play Christmas Day, they're always that first game.
right. Yeah, but I think like last year's, I remember being a stinker with the Knicks, or like at least I thought I was not interested in the game. But let me see what that one was. It was
Knicks
Yeah, I
Hawks.
think it was Knicks. It was Knicks 76ers, which I just wasn't. I don't know. I just wasn't interested in. But I think a Knicks Bucks one should be a good way to start the morning. People opening gifts, just hopefully full on some nice breakfast or something, laying on the couch ready for that game. And then the best game of the day though will probably be that afternoon game, which makes sense. You put it on right in the afternoon where a lot of people should be in front of the TV, which is the Warriors and Nuggets. That will be extremely star-studded. Arguably the best one of the day. Celtics, Lakers, you have it for history purposes. There's obviously stars playing in that game, but that's around dinner time on Christmas Day. So I think people will be not as many people will be invested. And then yeah, Philly Heat is fine with me, but then the Mavs and Suns should be a
I
fun
don't
one.
mind. Yeah, I like the late night one. I think that's probably the most. I mean,
Yeah,
I would hope that Kyrie and KD both decide to play on Christmas Day when it's the marquee matchup and one of the biggest days in the league's regular season. But that one has the potential to be a lot of fun if both teams live up to the hype.
Santa will put coal in the stockings if they don't play. Okay, so MLK Day. This has obviously become a really big day of the year for the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, January 15th. I love this day because I wake up, it's a Monday, and there's basketball at noon in the Central Time Zone. It's so exciting. So the first game you have Rockets 76ers. Then you follow that with the Spurs and Hawks, followed by Warriors and Grizzlies, and then Thunder Lakers. I was pretty shocked that the Rockets got a game here.
Yeah, that one doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But
It's
okay,
NBA TV only. It's not a TNT game, so that's at least good. But I
still,
guess you got to give the Rockets something. They do Ime Udoka, Fred VanVleet. They've Dylan Brooks. They've added some vets, but they could be a fun, frisky team in the West. But I'm expecting not a lot out of Houston, so I wouldn't be shocked if that game is underwhelming. The Wemby versus Trae Young. Sure, I guess. Why
sure.
not? Yeah, sure. And then
DeJounte Murray revenge game.
right. I guess that's what the hope is. I'm sure that'll be what Shaq and Kenny and Ernie
Exactly.
and Charles
That's
are
what they're talking
they're
about.
really talking about is that DeJounte Murray revenge game. And then Warriors Grizzlies, the matchup we talked about earlier. I mean, that's always that should be fun again. And I think by January 15th, John Morant should be back on the floor.
Yeah, I
Um,
believe he is. He's back by then.
25 game suspension, so
Yeah.
he should be back there, and that's when he's out there against the Warriors, that's fun. But honestly, I think the best game is the Thunder Lakers game. I high on
Same.
the Thunders this year. Very excited for that one, and I think that's a young team that can give a team like the Lakers some trouble. So I like that
That
match.
has very similar Kings Warriors type vibes
Agreed.
to it.
Yeah. Thunder, I would watch out for them this year. I like their. Although I see that, I think the sports books feel the same way because it seems like their over under is set pretty darn high, and I don't know.
I think they're good. I think they're a popular team amongst
Yeah,
NBA bettors with their preseason
yeah.
stuff.
They had I think they're set at like 44 wins or something already, which is higher than I would. I'm not going to bet that. I don't know. I'm not going to bet that, but so the sports books are high on them right
Once we
now.
get closer to the regular season, I think we'll have a lot of fun doing some win total props picks
For
and all
sure.
that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
I
It'll be a
want this
blast.
dust to settle a little bit, see if any
Yeah.
of these big trades happen, and then we can do a fun little show where we go through the over under win totals, especially because I think there's some teams that aren't even listed yet because of the trade potential.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing with the schedule that I'll point out here is the NBA has returned for their second straight season a Rivals Week. This is this was okay. I mean,
This was a thing last year?
this was a thing that some people don't even
Oh,
know about.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
didn't
it was. It was a
didn't
thing
know that.
that was, yeah. A lot of people didn't know about this. I think even last year, but it was implemented, I believe, around the same time in January. It might have been more early January, but technically it included all teams. Every team that week was playing a rival. The Bulls, I remember that week, were put up against the Charlotte Hornets.
Big
Don't
time rivalry there.
Big
That
rivalry
historic
there.
Bulls Hornets that played like one playoff series in the early 90s.
And the reason behind it, I guess, was a Lonzo versus LaMelo. Well,
That worked out.
yeah, that worked out great. But this year, I think they have. It appears they have boiled it down to just 11 games that will be considered Rivals Week in late January. And these games, some of the rivalries, I won't list all of them, but I'll give you some of the confusing ones. We have Portland versus San Antonio. I understand that the idea there is Scoot Henderson versus Victor Wembanyama, but it's
Okay.
just weird to see that
Yeah.
considered a rivalry game.
Okay.
The one that's even weirder is OKC versus San Antonio. Sure.
Sure. They're located somewhat near each other geographically.
Right. Brooklyn and New York. You can try to make that as much as you want a rivalry, NBA, but it's not.
It's just not.
There's just not Brooklyn fans. Everyone cares about the Knicks, and that's that. I guess they're still holding on to the Luka Doncic Trae Young thing because Dallas and Atlanta is considered a rivalry game. Dallas gets two rivalry games, just like San Antonio does, because they also, the one that makes sense is the Mavericks, because those two have butted heads, especially Luka, Devin Booker over the past couple of years. That one's an actually fun one.
Yes.
Then you get
Spurs. Sorry, Mavericks Suns is a rivalry.
Yes, but then Dallas and Atlanta's not. And you get Embiid versus Jokic. They're considering that to be a rivalry, so that's one of those games. And then, the other one, there's some other ones listed there. They make a little bit more sense. I mean, Lakers, Clippers, sure. Again, Knicks, Brooklyn situation. Lakers reign supreme. It is what it is. This is what's hard for me because I love this idea, right, of this rivalries week thing. We love it in college football. We love it even in baseball when there's these rivalry series that you get. Crosstown Classic in Chicago, but there's also Red Sox, Yankees. That's always scheduled. Like but the problem with the NBA and they've kind of dug themselves into this own hole is I don't really think there's rivalries in the NBA really at all. I mean,
there's really not.
If there are, they last a year or two.
Yeah, like teams change so much, and I don't know. It just doesn't. The rival, like Lakers Celtics, that's a rivalry. That's always going to be a rivalry, but still, that's built on what happened.
Yeah, but it doesn't
feel
feel like it. It doesn't when they play. I don't think it's. I know I'm not a Laker or Celtic fan, but I feel like I have those people in my life, and it's not like they're getting up out of their seat every time it's a Laker.
Yeah,
Celtics game.
When the Bulls play, even who do you think is the big rival? Right? Is it still the Knicks?
There's nobody for Chicago. I wrote about this on Bleacher Nation this morning. I actually wrote about this in my bullets. I said that if I had to pick one for this season, it would be either Toronto or Miami, simply because of the
Miami. I guess Miami. There've been quite a few playoff series there. I feel like too. So maybe that's kind of the closest thing you could draw to it. I don't know. They've been an annoying thorn in the side of the Bucks, but they've never really seriously beat the Bucks.
They've never been good at the same time as well. So it's not like there's a history of that rivalry, in my opinion. So it's not it's hard to pinpoint them. Like you obviously have your easy geographical rivalries, Knicks, Brooklyn, Lakers, Clippers. I get it, but no Knicks fan is feeling like Brooklyn's their rival. No Lakers fan feels like the Clippers is their rival. I think if I had to pick one for this season that, but again, the whole point is it just feels like this season. It could end this season. It could end next season.
Yeah, Kings Warriors, I think, would be one I'd want to watch.
Right, the Kings Warriors one feels like that could be a budding rivalry over the next couple of years. The Suns, the Suns Mavericks rivalry has now kind of spanned a couple of seasons, so I would say that's kind of one of the best ones we have currently in the NBA.
We'll get force-fed Nuggets Lakers down our throat probably as a rivalry as well by the league and the
even
TV
though the Nuggets swept the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals.
It was one of the all-time great series, though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the games were close.
It was a very good series. I know that, but it was a sweep.
Yeah, it was still a sweep, and and you can push like I would hope that a Portland and San Antonio, for example, with Scoot Henderson and Victor Wembanyama, I would love for that to become a rivalry of sorts, but it's just
But
not.
it's not yet.
So
We need
yeah,
to see them in a playoff series.
so I guess the NBA is hoping as well that they promote this sense of rivalry through these rivalry weeks that they've started. But at the same time, then you should probably schedule the same teams playing each other during that stretch of the calendar every year. You
Yeah.
should have Bulls Knicks every time that year. You
And they
should
should be playing
have
each other in the final week of the season too.
yeah, and this year they do. The Bulls and Knicks play each other three times in the last like 10 games. But yeah, I mean,
Great. That'll go well.
if you want this, yeah, if you want this to become a thing, then I guess the best way to do it would be to schedule the same games, at the same time every year. So then teams expect that, and even if the rosters change, that game's going to be there, and it's like what you get in college football or things like that. So, I respect the idea, and I just don't know about the execution. And that's what I fear my opinion will also be about the in-season tournaments later this season. I respect the idea. I just hope the execution is also going to be there. Okay, I think that wraps everything up for now. That's the best type of schedule talk that we can do. There's going to be some more stats and things we can get into as the season nears, looking at maybe strength of schedule, but I think even that's hard to do at this time of year just because we don't know. Like it's hard just because we don't know how good certain teams are going to be, and it's not until the kind of first month of the season that you really get a good idea of okay, how much harder is the schedule from here on out now that we know how good certain teams are, what moves certain teams made. So I think that's a good place to stop it for today. Matt, please try to calm down about James Harden.
I've calmed a little bit, but still, dude, you willingly agreed to opt in. You could have became a free agent. You had the choice. You chose not to. That's the choice you made. You knew what that risk was.
Yeah, I agree. Fun weekend plans, Matt?
I got a wedding on Saturday.
Oh.
So yeah,
okay,
that'll be fun. Weddings are always fun. How about yourself?
This is the first weekend in several weekends that I have that I feel like I have nothing going on. I had
good for you. Those weekends in the summer, the older we get, are few and far between, and those are. Oh, I don't have to leave the couch this weekend. That's pretty great. That's pretty great.
Yeah, we had an engagement. Me and my fiance had an engagement party last weekend. That took a lot of emotion,
A lot of energy.
A lot of energy. Yeah, and it's like a 4-hour open house event, and then it just flies by like that because every time you turn around, somebody new talking to you, and I'm like, I just want to go get a beer, but it's been 45 minutes since I left to try to get a beer, and I'm not able to. But yeah, I'm excited to just not do anything this weekend. That's my plan. Yeah. But that's where we'll close things out. We'll be back next week, hopefully to talk less about James Harden and more about something. I guess we'll find out. Thank you guys for listening. You can always subscribe and go to the YouTube channel to watch this live. You can go to the BetSperts YouTube channel and put on a little notification, and you'll know when we're going live each week, and you can watch with us. So thank you guys for listening.